People only post to get validation. If you're constantly thinking how well I'm received, it's going to be very problematic. You are doing it only to show them that, I'm living this very fancy life, or look at me, this is who I am. They have to show that, like more parties means more success. I mean, more pictures means more joy, which is actually not true. You're constantly trying to match your reality with what the filter is trying to show you. People have started becoming very lonely. People will say, ChatGPT is my best friend. Why is ChatGPT your best friend? For every regulation, we are looking at the device to regulate ourselves. The world is not on your phone, it is actually outside.
Whatever you feel for yourself is what you're going to give out in the world.
This happens in a selfie syndrome when, a person's emotional cup is empty. I feel empty from within. My emotional cup is empty. So I don't know what else to do. So I just find some pleasure online.
Do you think we're really living our lives from the inside, or do you think all of us are actually just watching ourselves from the outside?
In my opinion, I think.
Hi Kushnaz, welcome back to the Human Thread. Last time we spoke about body image issues and the psychology behind it. Today I want to address a few different issues. So let's start with the selfie syndrome. Can you explain psychologically what does selfie syndrome mean?
Right, so I'm very happy to be back here. Thank you for having me. So when we talk about selfie syndrome, let's see what selfie is today, in today's world. So in today's world now, selfie is no longer something that you took just to document, a memory or a moment. So it started with an intention. The selfies that, you have to be self-reliant and you don't have to maybe on trips and all disturb other people. And
To
you
take a
can take
picture.
it, and you can take it yourself. But now it has become much more. It's almost like a story that you're trying to tell the world, or a statement that you're trying to make, as though like, that, okay, I am pretty, look at me, I'm strong, accomplished, unfazed. So all of these things have changed. And psychologically now, selfies have become a way of a person looking for validation for themselves, seeking that self-worth even if they don't have it otherwise, and also looking at themselves as confident if they get like a good social media validation or approval. So that is what it has become these days.
So do you think this is a coping mechanism, or do you think this is a defense mechanism that works for us?
So see, it starts, I think, as a coping strategy, right? Like being seen gives people comfort. Not being seen or not being noticed nowadays brings them discomfort. So if a person's self-worth is low, then being seen is the only way that they find themselves to be comfortable, let's say online or in their daily lives. It becomes a syndrome or a defense mechanism when they cannot do without it. So that happens if, a person feels that, no, I need to be feeling okay. And the only way that I feel okay is through, external validation or people letting me know that you are fine. So that whole thing is that, am I good? Do I matter? Is no longer coming from within. It is coming from somebody else telling you that you are doing fine, or by, the likes that you get.
But a lot of people see it as self-empowerment, like the word you use, right? I am being myself. I'm not put down by others. I don't care what others thought about my body before, but today I'm putting it out there. And selfie syndrome is also seen as a sense of power of explaining yourself without explaining yourself.
Right.
So
Right.
people feel like, oh, my friends rejected me in high school, but here I am. I have very successful vlogs. I have a very successful channel. I'm very successful on Instagram. I put out reels of really who I am. So it's almost also become like this is the only form of true expression. Where do you think is the fine line between self-expression and self-destruction?
So self-destruction happens when all of this, right? When you're being true to yourself, right? When you are okay with who you are. And when you say that, okay, people put themselves out there, and let's say if they're content creators, it's okay. But now the problem is that this is trickling down even to the normal population, where you don't need so much feedback, or you don't really need them to put themselves out there. So self-expression is something that, okay, you get an idea, it was like Instagram was also created for people to just, maybe exhibit a talent, maybe exhibit their art, like a cooking dish or whatever. Maybe they did makeup well and they wanted to show that. So self-expression is that. And how you see a healthy self-expression is through, like random posting. People know they'll post something, they won't post, they're okay with it. So self-destruction happens when a person cannot do without any kind of feedback. Like I know of people who will say that, oh, I went to a party, so I'm like, okay, how was it? Oh, I look great, but kya faida? I was like, why, kya fayda? Ek bhi acha picture nahi aaya. Or, like I could not document it. So that curation and documentation is so important that the joy somehow has gone away from an experience if it isn't documented or photographed. So there I feel that, that's a very unhealthy way of living, where a memory is not lived, but it has to be documented and praised and liked by others.
Yeah, I think the praised and documented is the key words here, the very important words, because the focus has become that everyone should see it for it to be validated that it happened.
Yes.
I think experience are also being taken and done for the reason.
Yes.
So I think that also,
Yes.
there can be, I'm sure, positive outcomes out of it. There are some people, let's say, who didn't go to theme parks with their kids. They were a little lazy about doing it, or they were like, I don't really like going on rides. But because, let's say, the rest of the world is doing it on Instagram, they would take their kids as well. I'm giving a very silly example. But I just feel like in imitation, sometimes good results do come. But I think sometimes it can be negative as well. So tell me, what's the difference between self-expression and self-surveillance?
So let's take self-expression first. I would divide it into two halves, right? Which is healthy and one which is unhealthy. So let's say that we are going for a cricket match, okay, all of us. And let's say that a person takes out their phone, takes 1 or 2 pictures, is happy, singing slogans, puts the phone away. You're trying to express yourself. You're trying to show that, yes, we were in a cricket match. We were all happy. So what happens here is that the image that was taken is secondary and the experience is primary. So your self stays integrated. You're happy, you come back with a happy memory. Now, self-surveillance is something like you become like a big boss in a big boss house, but you yourself are the contestant and the big boss. So the self gets fragmented into a few halves. So one is the one, obviously, the one who is living it. But that becomes very, very small as a percentage. The other one who is viewing you live it. So it's fragmented. And the third one is judging how you're going to be received in this world. So there it's like, you are the actor, director, and film critic, everything together. So I think that is where the real problem comes, when the self feels fragmented and it's like you're constantly confused which identity you should stick on to.
So according to you, how does selfie syndrome show up beyond taking photographs of self?
Yeah, that's a good question, because see, selfie syndrome happens even before the posting or before taking pictures. So that before part is that when, a person sees themselves as like, a body or a person who needs a makeover. Or like, why people say that, okay, I am like a person in the making. That's when they think of themselves like that. So they are not able to accept who they are. Now we have these current Gen Z terms, if you may have heard. It's called looks maxing. That was a really big trend going on social media. Now looks maxing is that you have to max out on your looks and make the maximum out of it. So there are two parts again to it. One is like, okay, you have like a healthy skincare routine. You may want to do a certain makeup. It gets worse when people want to, change the way their faces look, probably go for surgeries, fillers, and something also called mewing. I had patients who did something called mewing. It's like a jaw correction by just, holding your tongue on top of your mouth like this, and you do this, and that's called mewing. It's a Gen Z trend, and it had taken up last full year. And I have had people who've come with mewing and thinking that, oh, this is something which is going beyond posting your pictures, where you want your body to look a certain way, probably because, when you use filters in your head, it looks better. So you're constantly trying to match your reality with what the filter is trying to show you, because in reality. And then now, because people have low attention spans, what happens is that it is mewing and all. I mean, there is no research which says that mewing actually changes the jaw structure. It can't. But they do that. Then they get frustrated. Some people compulsively do and get frustrated. Some people may do it and just, just leave it. And in the whole thing, you just feel empty and you just feel that, okay, life is not really worth it because I'm not looking the way I want to.
So much focus on the external, right?
So much.
And very surprising, because I've not heard of this word, even though you said it's trending all of last year, but for some reason I missed out.
Right. So even I came to know when a patient of mine came with that syndrome.
And then you must have Googled it.
Yes,
and
but did you know that my daughter knew about it? My daughter was 12 at that time. Now she's 13. Wow. She told me, yes, mom, I know it's mewing. And she did that and she showed me what it is. And I was like, something like this. I said, how do you change your jaw structure? So it was basically invented by some dentist for some other reason. His name was Dr. Mew, and then this word came out, and
Yeah.
all this is Google research. I don't know, but this is how it came across.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think my concern here is
Hmm.
the extreme focus on
Yes.
external. I mean, you know, I mean, basically speaking, from a very basic point of view, let's say you have 75, 80 years of your life. You're going to look a certain way at 10, then at 20, then at 30, then at 40, 50, 60, 70, 80. And like that's just a normal, how should I say, form of life. That's just how life is. You're going
Right.
to age a certain way. Some people are genetically blessed, they don't age as
Right.
fast as other
Yes.
people, and then some people do. But I feel like in the end, we all are gonna, you know, we're gonna be born and then we die,
Yes.
and then it's just a journey to enjoy. And I think so much focus on external kind of takes away, like you said very correctly, the joy of living.
Yes.
Because every day the focus is on the clothes, the skin, the
Right.
hair care routine, and the skincare routine, the 7
Hmm.
steps of everything.
Hmm.
And I'm not saying I have anything against it, but I just feel like keep it to the minimum, keep it to what makes you happy, not what brings external validation along with it. As long as it's internal.
Yes.
You know,
True.
I think a lot of focus has become on external, thinking it's internal, like I feel happy doing it, but is it really you?
So I would ask them that if you feel happy doing it, would you do it on a lazy Sunday when nobody was watching you?
Yeah.
That's a question one can ask. And if the answer is a no, that I wouldn't do that on a lazy Sunday, then maybe you are doing it only to show other people or show them that, I'm living this very fancy life, or I'm, like, look at me. This is who I am.
What do you think are the quiet signs which you think ultimately will be very problematic in this segment?
In this segment, okay, so look, the quiet signs, it starts from you giving a lot of focus probably to the likes or comments that come. I have people who will constantly keep refreshing their feed to see ke ek like aaya ke nahi aaya, how many views. So posting itself has become very chaotic for some people, right? Because they only post to get validation. It's earlier, when you had news articles and all, you would just write a news article and then you would assume that, people will read it. So whether 10 people are reading or 1,000 people are reading,
You didn't know.
it didn't matter. Because,
You didn't know.
Yeah, you didn't know also. And it didn't matter as much because
It didn't matter because you didn't
Yeah,
know. That data
correct.
wasn't available, so
You're
we
right.
didn't care.
Yes, exactly. We didn't care, right? Now the thing is that the feedback is so instant, whether it is picking up, not picking up, whether it is there, not there. That has made people more and more anxious. And the quiet signs are this way, that some people make content only tailored to recent trends. Some may, I know of people who will archive a post if the post is not doing well. Nowadays, people have started hiding likes, hiding views. Okay, they say that, that gives me peace, but why in the first case are we so anxious? And believe me, this, I'm not talking about content creators. That's their job, they're supposed to do that. This is about normal people, like normal adolescents, young adults like 40-year-olds, probably like a lawyer or maybe not a doctor, but even a lawyer or a doctor or a designer or someone who does not have to really put themselves out there to take that level of feedback, but they are still doing it. Right, and that is, I feel, like a really quiet sign that this is creeping into our system, in mentally. And this is a very big problem, because if you're constantly thinking of how well I'm received, it's going to be very problematic.
And what? Not only that, what about the quiet signs you're teaching the young adults in your family or environment without realizing?
Right, correct. You don't realize, because this is unintentional, right? So when a child sees a parent getting obsessed, like over some Instagram likes, and we think that our children are not listening to us, but they are observing us. They are somewhere modeling us. At least there is like this silent chatter that's happening at home. So they are also thinking that, oh, this is the way to be. So when it reflects in the child, that's when we come to know that, oh, okay, I had not seen this about me earlier. I wish I had.
As such a seasoned psychologist, I want you to explain what are the implications of children making reels, dancing on reels, making videos at the age of 8, 10, some appropriate, some inappropriate, making fun of their parents, got a million likes, suddenly that child and that parent thinks this is the way to go forward. And then they make lots and lots of videos of the child mimicking the mother, father, grandparent, doing silly things that are not required for that age group. What are your thoughts on that?
So, in my opinion, when children are exposed to this kind of performance level, and kept on a stage, I think what happens to them is that they learn only to live with feedback, and they learn only to lead with external validation. Now, these kids that we are talking about, or children, are from the age of, let's say, 5 to 15, when their minds are very, very raw. They are like raw sponges. Whatever you put in a sponge, the child is going to absorb.
Correct.
So in that case, you may even be giving a rise to kids who may become narcissists because maybe they, like all the attention, or you may even have a generation which will become anxious because if one or two reels work for them and some don't, then they constantly feel that we have to perform to look better or to feel noticed or loved.
Yeah, I really agree with you, because a lot of times I see them and I feel like you see one or two reels and it's fun and it's sweet and it's cute, and you think to yourself, oh, how cute, this 8-year-old dressed up as a grandma and doing some acting, and okay, it looks funny. But when you see that repeatedly, and your algorithm changes, right? You see one and you like one and you suddenly get like all of these kids performing. And I was just like, what is happening?
It is concerning.
It is concerning because all these kids are performing firstly for who?
Yeah.
So if a child has gone into drama and theatre, I understand when we were kids, there was somebody from school, let's say, who was a part of the drama team and theatre, and they were performing and whatever, and that was looking like a career path at the age of 8. But today it's just for social media. It's just for, like you said, I don't know, likes or being liked, and being a social media sensation and a one-off hit or whatever. And I think one needs to think, is it really going to lead to a career?
Yeah, it may or may not. And
That's
the downside is that, if you would have heard other people say that, oh, this girl was very cute, now she doesn't look that cute.
Yeah.
So somebody that you're following at 4 or 5 and who gets so many likes, and then suddenly people start saying, because, developmentally when children grow, when they're in their teens, they go through hormonal changes. So people comment that way also, that, oh, she was cute, she's no longer cute, which can also really damage a child's self-esteem.
Yeah, that would be detrimental to someone growing up, and then for the entire life, they'll think, now I'm ugly.
Yes.
I was only cute as a kid.
Cute as a kid. Yes.
Yeah,
correct.
I absolutely agree. So, do you think we're really living our lives from the inside, or do you think all of us are actually just watching ourselves from the outside?
In my opinion, I think we are all mostly watching ourselves from the outside, right? Because see, those who live a full life, okay, they are content people. Okay, so contentment comes from living life fully. It doesn't come through devices and posting and all of that. But anxiety comes from watching our lives live it on social media. So while we all, of course, try to live life to the fullest and from within, many of us have fallen prey to this new, trend of looking at our lives from the outside, maybe through social media, WhatsApp, whatever. Nowadays, there are so many WhatsApp statuses also, right? People are uploading, they say that, oh, I'm not on Instagram or Facebook, so how am I addicted? But then WhatsApp status is something that people keep going on. So I think that, yes, we as a whole unit, as a world, I think we lead more externally to maybe impress, maybe not all, but many of us, or at least not if every day, then a few times a month for sure.
So, do you think the camera replaces the caregiver's gaze?
No, in my opinion, I don't think it ever can, because see, camera will never have a human emotion, and it will never be able to reflect what human eyes can reflect. So yes, sure, camera is a lens, right? Very similar to how an eye is, but an eye can show warmth, an eye can show love, and I can show so many things. Like, how will you ever replace a mother looking lovingly at her child when the child does something good? The lens can show you a moment, but it cannot evoke an emotion. Correct. Because you are reflecting that same emotion back. So no, caregiver's gaze can never be, it can never be replaced by a camera.
Can you tell me 3 top practices that we all can apply to kind of create a balance? Because I don't think screens are ever going away. I don't think social media is ever going to go away. I don't think online living is going to go away. It might change formats. There was Facebook that was very prominent 10 years ago. Today it's Instagram and Twitter and something else. And I'm sure there are 10 more things to come. Google search was everything. Now AI searches everything. So I think it only gets more and more. And it only becomes more instant, if nothing else. Like, everything has become real time. So tell us the 3 top practices we can apply to kind of find a balance amongst all this.
So, see, first is to not be over reliant on any technology or device. So, I have people who keep saying that, oh, I use this app, that app because it makes my life convenient and comfortable. But I would really like to ask, like, is it really that, like, can you not think on your own? So let's say that people are becoming numb and dumb is what we say, because there's so much over here. Do you really need like an app to remind you? You can do that nowadays. There are apps like financial apps which tell you how much you've spent, but if you were to write it on your own, it would be still okay. So I think over reliance, and every time like a gadget comes, we want to buy the new gadget, new app. So I think that we can say that okay, we are good without an app. Two would be that while we are constantly trying to fix our faces, to fix how we look, how photos can get better, I think we should all try and fix our inner self. So if there is any childhood trauma, or if there is anything in the childhood which has troubled you in the past, and you see that that's the result how you behave in your present life, probably taking therapy or addressing that issue is more important than trying to just constantly make it better externally. And I think the third would be to really be able to love self, right, unconditionally, by telling yourself that I am enough, whether people validate or don't. Because your self is something that goes with you all the day, all time, everywhere.
Born with it, you'll die with it.
You die with it, right? So I think that is very important. Like that self-love and self-worth will never come from these external things. First, it will come internally. So if we start living like that, I think it will be a big change in our lives.
It's very strange or very funny. Actually, a thought came to my mind. You said there's an app to remind finances. That is still not that bad. I actually was sitting with a few friends, and somebody's phone buzzed, and I asked them.
Don't tell me water.
It was. And I actually asked her, I said, what is that reminder? And she said, it's a reminder for water. And I looked at her and I said, are you 5? And she's like, what do you mean? I said, why do you have a reminder to drink water?
Yes.
You're a 40-year-old woman. You don't know when to drink water. Does your body, your thirst not tell you? And she laughed and she's like, oh, this makes me drink water way better. I just looked at her and I said, you know what? This is just too much for me to handle. Let's be a little old school. Let's just drink and eat when we want to. Let's not apps tell us, when to eat and when to drink. That's just too much. Like that for me was like, oh my God, are you crazy? So I understand what you mean. Like we really don't need a reminder for everything. We don't need a filing of everything. There are some things we should naturally and organically do, just to keep lives normal. Otherwise, how will we remain normalcy?
No, we can't. And then we'll just become over dependent on
and robots.
Yes, and robots.
So can you explain, Kushnaz, what are the main childhood patterns or environments that are more prone to this selfie syndrome?
Right. So let's divide them into 4. So there is secure attachment, anxious attachment, avoidant attachment, and disorganized attachment. We'll see each of them and we'll see how they can come up in this selfie syndrome also. So firstly, when we say secure attachment, it all depends on the caregiver. Right, these attachments. So let's say that wherever the caregiver is, let's say, nurturing, is responsive, is attentive, that's when children, grow up feeling very, very balanced, validated, happy. They're not afraid of the world. And how that percolates into their posting is that they have random posting, they have more of self-expression, they post when they want to, when they don't want to, they're not very obsessed with likes. So they feel secure from within. So their online activity is also pretty secure. So they don't get very hassled by online feedback.
Online activity might be like a hobby.
It could
you
be
know how
hobby,
like people do time pass, like it's there, it's for the sake of everyone does it. I posted a picture here and there.
Absolutely correct. So then the next is the anxious attachment. So this is where the caregiver is inconsistent. So sometimes they pay attention, and sometimes because they are busy or they are not able to give enough time. That's when the child keeps on thinking whether I matter or I don't matter, because it gets mixed signals.
Hot and cold
Constantly. So these are the ones who will later on in life also, in their personal relationships, friendships, romantic relationships, always have this fear of rejection, fear of abandonment. They become very codependent on their partners. And how you can see that in the selfie syndrome way is that like they'll keep posting only for likes. They'll keep checking if they are like, they keep checking, do I matter, am I needed, am I still valid in the world? So that
and they'll delete, like you said.
Yes, they'll delete stuff also if they feel it's not working for them. Then the next one would be the avoidant pattern. There, the caregiver is always rejecting the child, or is always telling, like, let's say, a boy to man up, or a girl to say that, oh, don't be so emotional. So these kind of caregivers, of course, unknowingly are trying to maybe make the child strong. But what in turn happens is that the child becomes more and more emotionally distant, and the children realize that, okay, I can only be in this world if I'm hyper independent. So those people, even in relationships, will be that way. They'll be slightly aloof and distant and hyper independent. So they may either not post at all, or when they post, they'll post only very, very polished and curated selfies or posts, or not post at all, because they don't want the world to know what's going on within them. And the last is disorganized, which is self explanatory. It's like a very chaotic parenting style, where the caregiver is chaotic. Like sometimes the kids fear them also, and sometimes they get comfort from the caregiver. So these people in turn are always confused, and in relationships they have this push and pull themselves, because they weren't sure how to behave with their caregivers. And the selfie part for that would be that they would, like, randomly post, then not post at all, then they'll go through some sense of withdrawal, and then immediately excessively post. So their thing is like a yo-yo, and there is no, I mean, you can't see that, the feed is uniform. It could be, just jab bhi man mein aaya tab kiya, delete kiya. So it's that way.
Wow. I never thought that we'll one day sit and discuss selfie syndrome, right?
Yeah.
It was more of a slang word. I remember a few years ago, I take my selfie, because like you said, it
Yes.
started with nobody's there to take a picture of you.
of you.
You're standing on a cliff
Hmm.
and you've gone on a holiday and there's nobody else there, and you're like, okay, forget it now. You can turn the camera and take it yourself.
Hmm.
So, it started from there.
Yes.
Just look where we've reached.
Yeah.
It's
But you
crazy.
know that the most noble of technological inventions also, with the most noble idea that they'll help us. But it is us human beings what make it the way it is today, right? So technology was made only for us to use it.
Convenience.
But then convenience. But human beings will learn to use, then misuse, and then abuse any technology.
You spoke about the 4 syndromes and the childhood patterns. Very intriguing. I would like to ask, what happens when a child is praised for performance but not for presence?
Right, so that has a very bad effect on the child, because what happens is that the child suddenly starts feeling that me existing is not enough. Right? Only if I perform will I be liked. Only if I perform, then my parents will applaud me. They will discuss me. And if I don't perform, they will either criticize me or they will withdraw love. So when a child is constantly, in this thing that I have to perform to get the validation of parents, and then of course it trickles down to friends and colleagues and romantic relationships later. So in this, I would also say that one thing that I see nowadays is that parents making, these Instagram accounts for their children. Now, see, don't get me wrong, the parents have like a good intention. Maybe they're doing it out of pride, out of love, right? But still, they're putting their kids out there. Now, what happens as a result of that is that the child realizes that, oh, so I am being noticed, and they don't need that kind of validation. It's not about right or wrong, but a child's mind cannot really process, why have I been put in front of an audience, an online audience, and now I have to perform. And this you'll see, like, examples of, like, even if like the mother is posting a lot and doesn't have a child account, so it will be like, come smile. And most of the pictures, people tell me that before a perfect picture is a lot of chaos, right? And you may have seen these memes also, where they say that, before that it's like, we had like a fight, but now, we call them that, oh, this is like my world, my children are my world. So the things leading up to the full performance, leading up to a perfect selfie, is something that is a problem, because children grow up to think that I have to be perfect if I have to be well received.
So tell me, these are all effects and downsides to the selfie syndrome with other people, right? What about our relationship with ourselves? Because in the end, our relationship with ourselves determines all our other relationships.
Yes.
If you're not happy with yourself, you barely can give happiness to others. If you're miserable inside, if you are self-critical, you will criticize others also, because you don't know how to praise yourself or others. So I think whatever you feel for yourself is what you're going to give out in the world.
Right.
That's how I see life. And when I see people who are unhappy or unsatisfied. I feel like it all comes from deeper down within.
Yes.
Where do you think this selfie syndrome, how do you see it damaging the relationship we have with ourselves?
So, okay, so this happens in a selfie syndrome when, a person's emotional cup is empty, right? So, I see, let's say, like a mother who doesn't feel validated at home, probably romantic relationship is not going so well, right? And is constantly looking within to find some strength, but does not get, because nobody is making her feel like she is good enough or doing enough. I have so many people who've had successful careers and now are, let's say, homemakers, right? And they are constantly made to feel that, oh, but like, oh, when you were working you were fine, or you were studying in this maybe Ivy League college, you were okay, you were in uni. But now that if they are homemakers, many of them come to me and say that I feel empty because people have associated my worth to being, attaching it to career or from where I came from. And now that I don't have that, I feel empty from within. My emotional cup is empty, so I don't know what else to do, so I just find some pleasure online. But they never think that this is something that they can fix from themselves, with themselves, because they feel that when I look at my kids or my spouse or in-laws or anybody, I just see some emptiness and I don't see that regard for me. And that is when it was very important for us to fix ourselves rather than looking for external validation.
So you would say, all in all, it does damage your relationship with yourself.
Absolutely, because you have silenced the self's voice right somewhere. So bichara, the self goes in a corner and sits, and you have given so much importance to everybody else, to the chaos, the sound,
The
outside,
noise.
the noise.
Yeah.
So you've done that, and then the self has nothing. The self doesn't even want to probably get up because it is tired. You're not listening to it. So earlier, when kids are growing up, and if they have secure attachment styles, they will still want to look within and validate or ask yourself. Like if let's say that today I'm saying that, am I looking good? I can still look at the mirror and say, yeah, I'm looking good. But sometimes people will click a picture and say, oh, but I need to see if I'm looking good.
Yeah.
Why that? Right?
Yeah.
So that's a problem.
So, in this world of chaos and social media and information available at every second, every corner, what do you think is happening to our authentic selves? What do you think is happening to our self-worth? And do you think all of this is being outsourced? Because there's very little left to actually genuinely question yourself, right? It is all borrowed information.
Yes. So I feel authenticity has definitely gone for a toss. And there are very few people who can say that, okay, I live my life the way I want to, and not just to show people. Like if you see, like nowadays, if you see, everything is so curated. Is it really authentic? And I have people who have, like, let's say 5 social engagements a week, but will say that I didn't even want to go for one of them. So I say that, but why do you go? Can't you just be authentic and say that I cannot? But they want to maybe be in that social circle, and that's the only way, probably it's expected out of them. But if they were their authentic selves, they would live very differently.
Correct.
But here they have to have this persona. They have to show that, like more parties means more success. I mean, more pictures means more joy, which is actually not true. So any person who were to be authentic to themselves would say that, and over something of anything, like, an excess of anything is going to be harmful and is not even appreciated by the person. But I think they are all in this vicious circle of trying to prove something to others, and that's when they lose their self-genuineness.
Yeah, I think everyone's stuck in some sort of a loop, right?
Yes.
And it's that, I mean, it's a cliche, but that fear of missing out is really,
Yes,
really
it
true.
is. It is.
It really, I'm sure you have so many people, patients who
Right.
come to you, and somewhere some of the diagnosis is that they have this fear that they'll
Yes.
miss out
Yes.
on that one party, one picture, one something, one event. So, what you're saying is that whole fear of missing out. I actually saw this happening, and I realized the intensity and the gravity of it. And I have also fallen to prey, of the same thing. When, let's say, like Coldplay came to India, right? And he had all those dates and stuff. And I hadn't really paid attention to tickets or anything because I know it's like bizarrely expensive. And I was like, who's going to go all the way? And a friend of mine said, hey, guess what? I got tickets for all of us. We've got this VIP section, da da da. And my son really wanted to go. So I said, okay, we'll go. And we were like a bunch of us. We were 8, 9, 10 of us who went. When I came back, I had a couple of people telling me how bad they felt that they had missed it, and it looked out of the world and all of that. And I said, I'll tell you very realistically, it was very hot. We stayed there and waited there for too long before it started. It was a chaos to come back because like 30,000 people in
Right.
that stadium. It took us half an hour of walking, finding the car and all of that. I said the joy of listening to those songs actually was taken away by the whole experience.
Hmm.
And I said it in the most realistic way possible that, if you're going to plan this, first you don't
Right.
plan with your child. My child was famished by the end. And I gave a very realistic view. And she's like, well, you're just saying that because you were there. I saw all your pictures and your videos. It looked damn amazing. And I was like, no, that was just those 3 songs.
Right.
What about the rest 3 hours that we were there or anybody who was
Right.
there? That whole experience wasn't as amazing as it may have seemed online.
Hmm.
So I feel like it does happen, right? That fear
Yes.
of missing out is really real. People
Yeah.
do think that no, I don't believe in all this. I'm above this. I don't fall prey to all of this. But it does happen because when you watch something repeatedly on every person you know, then you
Yes.
feel like you're the only one not doing it. You're the only one who hasn't
Right.
seen it, and you really have missed out on something totally amazing. But it totally could have not been.
Yes, true. But that only a person who has experienced it will know. So the person viewing it from the outside is just going to see like a 15-second reel or a 30-second reel or some official posts which were, put by Coldplay. And they constantly feel that if I didn't have this in life and I didn't have this experience, so I missed out on such a big thing. In fact, I have had patients who have said that we know only 2 songs of Coldplay and the rest of the time we were bored because we didn't know. And there have been people who have, said that, okay, we didn't get the tickets. So they had screened the concert at home. It was officially screened, and some people had house parties, and probably they were happier because they didn't have to wait for that long. They didn't go through any of these.
No, my
long
point
queues.
here was not Coldplay and his performance, because
Correct.
that was outstanding. It truly was.
No, it was.
You
but
know
the
that
fear
your
of-
heart does feel
yes.
that rush. The first song that came on, the lights and everything. I'm not denying that, but I'm just saying that whole comparison game,
Yes.
that whole race to do what everybody else is doing.
Yes.
Are you really a fan? How many songs do you
Exactly.
know? How many years have you followed this guy or any
Yes.
artist? All these concerts have become, like a jungle race.
Yes.
You're going, I'm going to go.
Right.
Everyone's gone to that same jungle for that same rave party, not knowing who the DJ is. It's
Yes,
like that,
it's like that.
Yeah, but I feel like people really need to
Because
smartly
they feel
think.
that we have to put up with all of this, and only then we are cool, or only then we have lived life truly. So this has become like an example of living life truly is this, that you should have like a bucket list, and on that bucket list you have to constantly keep ticking it, and that is when you don't get that tick is when people get FOMO.
So let's talk about long-term implications of the selfie world. And by selfie world is not really the term selfie, but everything that we've discussed so far. Can you tell us what does this cost us long term in terms of attention span, identity stability, and relationships?
Right. So we'll take each, right? So fine. So firstly, the real cost of all this is, even before the attention span, why it is happening to our attention span is that our brain's full system, like the reward system is now changing, because everybody is looking for these dopamine hits, either by taking selfies, posting, looking at others, what they are posting. So the reward system in itself has changed. And what has happened is that these dopamine hits will actually affect a person's mood, a person's sleep, and also the management of daily activities. Inattention comes because you are so focused on this screen. I feel that, sometimes I tell my clients that please look up from this screen and look at the world. The world is not on your phone. It is actually outside, which they haven't. And inattention has increased because, reels are getting shorter. Everybody wants like powerful, impactful content in just 10 seconds, 15 seconds. Like maybe 15 seconds decides the fate of a reel. And that's how it has come, made our attention span come lower. Another risk or the real cost probably of these selfie taking is the amount of deaths which are happening in India. If you go to see that, like while taking selfies, people will go to any length, right, to take a good selfie, and other small mishaps which have happened, like people have lost their phones or phones get destroyed because they are wanting to show something which was maybe not doable by others, but they want to show that, oh, okay, so we are paying. So the cost of selfie is also sometimes taking away your life or taking away your phone. And thirdly, about relationships, right? Now, in relationships, I see that because of all this social media and just basic distraction, people have started becoming very lonely. right? Couples don't feel connected with each other. Even if they are watching TV sometimes together, they are constantly second screening, or something that you have seen online has, upset you. And then the partner comes home. The partner is unaware of what you've watched online, what has upset you. And suddenly you've probably compared yourself to somebody's fancy life and are not feeling very good about it. And then the partner comes and partner is clueless what has happened. Even in relationships, if you go to see, earlier people used to make time for each other, right? Now it's like, okay, just finish off whatever you have to say, because I need to be on my phone, this is my me time. So that has had a really bad impact on relationships, where we don't feel connected, we are just drifting apart from each other. And the fourth point is emotional regulation. Now think about it this way: we all have this center in our brain which helps us to regulate, but we have outsourced it to social media. So what happens as a result of that is we no longer feel the need to be able to deal with any emotion in real time, like let's say anxiety, anger, shame, guilt, happiness, whatever. We don't see the need, because it's like, okay, I'm feeling upset, let me see my phone. I'm feeling angry, I'll just go for reels. If I'm feeling low about myself, I'll go on Snapchat, probably click pictures or see what others are posting.
Or online shopping.
Or online shopping, yes. Online shopping, right? Because people have gain a lot of joy, temporary joy, right, through online shopping. So every time, for every regulation, we are looking at the device to regulate ourselves, which shouldn't have been the case. And there somewhere we are, reducing the ability to solve a problem on our own. Like I know of people who will say, oh, just chat gpt is my best friend. Why is chat gpt your best friend? Or sometimes, I try to remember a name, so even my daughter would be like, oh, just see it on chat gpt. I said, no, I want to regulate myself, let me think about the name. So what I do always as a practice is that I give 5 minutes to myself and I say that, okay, let me remember. If I remember, it's okay. If not, then I'll go on Google. But that over-reliance on technology and the over-reliance on being regulated by technology is really having a deep impact on people, because sometimes I feel that that sensor only will become inactive in human beings one day, where they won't be able to regulate themselves.
Correct.
Without a device.
So, Kushna, do you think moving forward, selfie syndrome can ever be reversed? Do you think the future generations can become less obsessive with self compared to the current generations? And do you think moving forward, this will be the new psychological normal?
See, it's already the new psychological normal. Technology is what we've made it. So we are already in that zone where, we say that, yeah, everybody is doing it. What's the big deal? It's just a selfie. Most people argue with me that I don't have selfitis. Like I'm not posting 6 times a day. But that is not what this syndrome is really. What happens here is that this has become a new normal, because we feel it's okay to, look at validation. It's okay to constantly dress up or constantly think how we are received. So that's already this phenomenon is already very much there in our generation. But the first part, that is it reversible? A lot of self work has to be done, and I think it is somewhere the responsibility of our generation and of our kids to be able to see that it is impacting us in a not so healthy way, and how we can put a break on it. And this will happen only if we change. Otherwise, if we are not going to change and expect the other generations to make a change, how will it come? Because this is learned behavior. Selfie syndrome or excessive posting is all learned behavior. You see something, you observe this, collectively as a group, as a generation, and you're just trying to, be in the trend and follow the same. So if we understand that this is actually a problem and we do some self work, only then will it be reversible. Because we'll have to say that, okay, I am okay to move against the wind, and I'm somebody who will rise above all these odds and say that, okay, and little things can be done. Like let's say, like you and me, if let's say we are in a group and we teach our children the same thing, that okay, like what are you doing, why are you taking so many pictures, forget it, come sit, we'll have fun.
Not
Right?
only that, like let's stop the performance. Because
Correct.
that way of being also becomes your life then. You're
Yes.
perpetually performing for
For
everybody.
an audience, like
Yeah,
an audience,
it doesn't even have
perceived
to be on a
audience.
screen. That
Right.
becomes a part of your
Correct.
persona. You are
Yes.
just performing.
Right.
You're not even being your authentic self, because now you feel like that's not good enough, that's not going to be acceptable. Forget the online people you don't know, the unknown world. Even to the known world, then you want to maintain that.
Right. because the problem is that you want to be perceived in a particular way. So you have decided that only this version of myself is a good version, not your authentic version. So you've realized that, okay, if I am this, if I am constantly maybe smiling or constantly put together, or constantly if I have to keep achieving things, then this is how people will receive me. But if we didn't have that anxiety, and if we were confident enough to put our authentic selves forward, maybe be okay with a, you know, a little bit of a frown, or a you know, like how people are nowadays so sensitive to a frown or just to a smirk, that they are like, okay, you know, like people are judging me, I should change myself, or I should be more like them. So interestingly, there was a school teacher with whom I was having a discussion. She was telling me that in her school, the kids who are doing well, or children who are doing well, are the ones who are feeling weirder, because, you know, they are above the average. And it just sounds so bizarre to me. And I said that, okay, explain me more. And she said that, you know, if somebody is like very good in music, or is doing something, you know, and spending maybe 4-5 hours a day, the other population is kind of making them feel that, oh, you're a nerd, or oh, you're this. So they've
You are
put that,
different.
you're different. So they've put that child who was high achieving in a category that, oh, you're different, and, you know, in this group we don't have that dynamic. And earlier in our times, I mean, a child who used to excel was put on a pedestal.
Yeah,
and
we used to look
somewhere-
up to them.
Yes, and now somewhere being average, or maybe being more conforming to a group dynamic, has become this, that okay, this group is on a pedestal, and the other person who's probably achieving is the one who is feeling
Weird.
left out,
Yeah.
or weird.
Yeah, I know. And my son told me, my son is 9.5, and he told me this very strange word called mid. And he said,
Hmm.
I mean, not mid in the way you and I
Huh,
use it,
huh.
that midway,
Huh,
not
huh,
that in the
huh.
middle, not mid,
Mid.
mid.
Hmm.
That when everything is mid,
Mid.
it flows.
Yes.
So I asked him, what do you mean by that? And he's
Yes.
like, so in school, like if it's not too hot, not too cold, it's mid. So
Hmm.
every person who's mid is
Hmm.
actually accepted.
Yes.
Yeah, so you're right. I've actually heard this as well.
Oh, I
And
didn't
I've
know
heard
it
this-
was called mid.
Yeah. So,
Huh.
and funny enough, I discussed this a few days ago because I
Huh.
asked him, what is this mid? I've heard you
Ah.
and your friends, you know, I've used this term. Is it middle?
Right.
And he's like, not in the way you are saying. And then he explained this to
Ah.
me. I'm not sure he understands what you're
Right.
saying, the depth of
Yes.
it. But I
Yes.
think it is that you don't step outside
Yes.
the boundaries,
Yes.
whether it's excelling or whether it's not.
Yes.
So it's
correct.
not like you're the best in class and you're the worst in class. You just have to be conforming to that one middle.
Right. Right.
Middle ground is the only safe ground
Only
to be.
safe ground. And it just makes us feel that, you know, are we really a generation which is glorifying mediocrity? Are we becoming that generation? Then that's really not good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So then are we a generation which is, you know, using mediocre behavior or glorifying mediocrity? If we are, then we'll become a generation where inventions will be much lesser. There will be no creativity. People will not want to, you know, break the glass ceiling. They may want to break the glass ceiling in other things. But, you know, when true invention, true creativity takes place, when one sees themselves as somebody who can do something away from the crowd and create something new.
Yeah, I think that sense of achievement might die, right?
Yeah.
Because then you're the odd one.
Yes, you're the odd one. And then you constantly feel that, you know, like I'm not part of that group. And see, at maybe 10, 9, 13, 14, all kids or children want is that, you know, they want
Inclusion.
to be included in a group. They don't want to feel that, okay, my friends are just looking at me as, oh, I'm some weirdo, or I'm some nerd, or this one thinks only about robotics. But then what will happen to these inventions or creative thinkers? Creative thinkers were never the ones who were, you know, pulled down by mediocre groups. They were the one who chose to excel and break
Stand out.
barriers. Yes.
Absolutely. I completely agree. I think it's quite a scary thought.
Yes, it
But
is.
I think what we can do is encourage whatever way we can, that if you are excelling in whatever you're excelling, as long as you love it, go for it.
Right.
Chase it, you know.
Yes.
The world really has no end of possibilities, and I think we
Hmm.
should keep repeating that. You want to
Right.
be the best at something, please go be the best at something.
Yes.
Don't conform to school
Hmm.
dynamics. I remember I went to a boarding school. My mom used to say, you know, all the girls don't play this sport, and you're asking me
Hmm.
to play it, and I was good at it. And she's like, so how does it matter if girls are? Because I used to play hockey, field hockey,
Ah.
and it was not a popular
Right.
choice.
It isn't.
It
Correct.
wasn't a popular choice, and I'm talking 30 years ago. It really wasn't a popular choice, and I was good at it. So the teacher would encourage. The sports teacher would be like, "No, she must come," and my mom would say, "No, you have to." And I was like, "Why? It is such an
Hmm.
unpopular choice. None of my friends play it." She's like, so what? You're good at it. Just go for it.
Mm.
And that push kind of, made me
Yes.
like, no, I must do it. And then you
Yes.
see yourself achieving. Then I used to be like, wow, I'm actually really good at it. Then you forget that you don't conform. But I'm saying that thing needs to come from home. That needs to come from your own people.
Right.
Your caregivers need to at an early age tell you, doesn't matter if you don't fit in. Just do
Right.
what's good.
Right.
And whatever you're good at.
Correct. So that is what we call mirroring, right? Most people feel that, when a parent mirrors or uses mirroring, they feel that it's like, oh, okay, like it's like a child is just copying a parent, but that's not what mirroring really is. Mirroring is that when a child is in doubt, the parent is standing there and saying that, look, I know you're right, and we are going to surf the wave. Do not worry, I am with you. And this is a feeling you want to obviously be in, like a group dynamic. You want to be present, you want to be seen and acknowledged by them, but remember that what you are doing is right, and I believe in you. If you have to go away from the crowd, is because you are probably creating something, or you're
Yeah.
having an identity of your own. Otherwise, if you go to see, currently if you see, all the kids dress up the same, they look the same, they have the same taste. So where is this one standout person who can say that, okay, like, I'm different and I'm okay being different because I have made this choice.
Yeah. You will see all the parents putting their kids in all the same classes also.
Yes.
Not even asking or questioning whether the child likes it
Right.
or not.
Right.
It's almost like that
Yes.
herd mentality.
True. But do you know that overscheduling is also a very big problem for kids? It is. Because, parents who have these massive schedules for the kids, one after the other, activity after the other, the kids are also quite confused, and by the end of the day, they're really drained. And they
Burnout.
don't know, and they don't know why they're doing so many classes. I mean, it would be better if they were given like a class, and then that skill could, be creatively used later. It would be helpful.
So, you and I are lucky to have come from a generation or from a time where things were simple. We grew up learning by playing, experiencing relationships, getting to know strangers on the playground, reading, going to the library, very basic, and now looking back, amazing,
Right.
lifestyles. Today, I guess the privilege doesn't exist. I guess it's not ever going to go back to that. It's like going back to, we would say Stone Age, right? To our parents.
Right.
For our kids, what we did was Stone Age. It's like
Right.
every time we look backwards, they will
Right.
think we can't go back to that. In this digital generation that's to come and that is already brewing, what do you think is going to happen to them? Because they are a generation who is growing up knowing themselves through a lens. They don't know themselves for who they are, but they are also learning to grow up with only what is being told to them about themselves.
Right. So, of course, like one very negative way of looking at it is that the generation is doomed, but we should keep it a little positive also. Firstly, I think that yes, it has happened. So, they will have to see this need or create a need to have some tangible experiences. So, see, even if we say that generations have progressed, it's never impossible to go back to a few basics, right? So what happens is that when we come in our 40s, nowadays, like people go back to their their simpler times, and then we'll go on some retreats, or how we learn to slow down. How schools can help in the same way is that if schools were to help the kids to implement a few practices where you go back to those tangible differences, experiences, that will help them. Otherwise, they are constantly seeing things online, and that's how they realize that's how you have to go ahead in life. But if schools can do that, if parents can do that, then it would be helpful for a child to know that it's okay to slow down. It's okay to not have digital overuse. Digital dependency is a very big problem, and one thing we have to realize is that we made AI didn't make us. And I think that is something that our kids, like the Gen Alpha kids, are not understanding. I mean, they are all pro AI, which is fine because AI can make life simpler, but they also have to constantly check if it is taking away their creativity and making them numb as a generation, and how they see themselves. So a little bit of going back to your basics might help the kids, move forward in life.
So, do you think the digital generation is struggling with anxiety, or they're struggling with the fact that they never know how to be with themselves alone?
I think it is an anxious generation more. See, when they are now, it's like when they are with themselves alone, they are never alone because they are always on a device. And I have seen kids, you know, who will hop from, so if a mobile phone is taken, then they'll go to their iPad. If iPad is taken, then they'll go to the TV. And if not TV, then they'll sit next to their parents and see what the parents are doing. And this is even at a preteen level. My own daughter, sometimes, you know, when we take away all the devices, will come sit next to me and say that, and she's constantly looking what I am doing, right? So I think that more than that, it is anxious. The generation is anxious because one, they don't know what to expect because things are changing very, very rapidly.
Correct.
And two would be that, you know, anxiety comes with a loss of control. Sometimes, you know, they are not able to control the narrative or control what is happening in the world, and they don't have all the information. And AI or technology makes us feel that we are supposed to be informed 24/7 about everything. So now there is no element of surprise left, or there's no element where you say that, okay, I don't know this and I'm okay with it. It's like becoming a generation where I have to know everything, only then I can decide my behavior. The other is that, you know, kids are now so conscious of how they come across. They constantly tell me that, you know, but what if I'm not perceived well? What if, you know, like people tell me that, okay, I'm having a birthday party, what if these many friends don't come? Or what if these many people don't post a reel for my birthday or post a story wishing me happy birthday? And they're constantly thinking that, and when I say that, oh, tomorrow is your birthday, are you very happy? They're like, yeah, I'm happy, but you know, 12 o'clock is giving me anxiety because I don't know how many of my friends are going to post a story for me. So I think that anxiousness is coming a lot in this generation because they don't know what to expect from this fast moving world.
You know, these kids have, like you said, grown up with a device, any device. They've seen devices since they're
Yes.
born. And it makes me wonder, do they perceive their parents also in a way which is very different to how we perceived our parents? Because their information is so different to what we had.
Right, they can. Because see, when we perceived, I think our perception was like compartmentalized. So there were only like one or two impressions that we had about our parents, right?
Like-
So we had a very different impression of our parents, but it was only compartmentalized. That, okay, strict father, lenient father, you know, loving mom, strict mom, just that much. Now the kids have so many different things that they see in their parents, right? Okay, so is this mom like a forgiving mom? Is she like a Gen Z mom? Is this a mother or a father who is, you know, knowing all the latest trends? And as human beings, because the other generation is also anxious, parents also don't know what to expect out of their reaction, and kids are getting a lot of mixed reactions from parents. I mean, earlier, like, you know, like a parent would just say that, okay, you cannot go out of the house, come home at 9 p.m. and all of that. So they were, you know, like very, you could easily predict your
And
parents'
clear boundaries
behavior.
were set.
Very clear, and you could predict what the father would say. Today, everything is confusing because you never know what mood the parent may be, and then how a boundary may be maintained or how a boundary would just not be maintained. So I think kids are also perceiving their parents differently. Also, there is this whole thing about gentle parenting, which has come up, right? So there is a thin line between firm parenting and gentle parenting. Mostly what's happening is that in the whole you of trying to be a gentle parent, people are becoming permissive parents. So they are just saying yes to everything, which is a very big problem. And then kids grow up to believe that, okay, like, you know, I have always been given this validation by my friends, my parents, everyone. So the world should treat me as though I'm special, because permissive parenting is that, right, where the child feels that I am super special. So small things also the parents will make a big deal out of it, which I think shouldn't really happen, in my opinion. I feel that, you know, parents should have firm parenting. There have to be clear boundaries, and the father and the mother should be in sync,
Yeah.
which doesn't happen very regularly because the parents are only bickering amongst themselves. So the child knows that whose word is the final word. Earlier, if you see, even if our parents didn't agree to something, maybe the father was the final word. In some places, mom was the final word. Here, what's happening is because the parents also, because earlier people used to have multiple kids, or at least 2 kids, 3 kids. Now we have single kids. So the father is also probably looking for some attention from the child. The
Yeah.
mom also wants to be the favorite of the child. So what happens is that everybody is trying to please the child. So the child grows up to think, oh, I'm so important and everybody has to, it's your
Comply.
job to comply and please me, right? And that is, and then if that doesn't happen in real life, the child is bound to feel anxious or lost.
My God, I think it's given me a lot to think about, but at the same time, it's been so informative because we take everything that's happening around us just for granted. It's
Right.
the normal, it happens, it's okay. You don't really stop to think about all the small things you're doing and how it's impacting your children, how it's impacting the next generation, and
Right.
you're shaping the future, not even realizing you're shaping the future.
Yes,
We,
exactly.
as collectively, as people, are shaping the next world.
Right.
So I think very informative, and I would say a very intriguing conversation for us to think about and really consciously make an effort to make sure that we are not raising anxious children.
Yes, and that's, I think the responsibility is on us,
Us.
right?
Thank you
It
so much,
is.
Krishnas. That was absolutely brilliant, and I loved having you again.
Thank you so much, Ashna. I loved being here as always and seeing you grow from, I think reel to reel has been a great journey. I've been following you always, and I think I'm very proud of what you are delivering here.
Thank you.
If you find yourself constantly worrying about how you're perceived on social media or your digital life, it's a sign that things should change. Hi, I'm Kushnaz Noraz. I'm a consulting psychologist. Know more about our inner struggles and how to maintain a good digital balance on the human thread. Watch the full conversation on all streaming platforms.